You know what bothers people the most? More than pain, more than grief, more than death. What bothers people the most is when something happens that should not happen. That violates our sense of rightfulness and justice and sanity. And if something can happen when it shouldn't, then anything can happen. Then nothing makes sense anymore. And that is more devastating than any pain. Viktor Frankl, in logotherapy, says, if I can find meaning to pain, I can tolerate all of it. If I can find meaning to a tragedy, I can survive it. I can live. But if I can't find meaning, that will destroy me. Because intelligent beings cannot tolerate senselessness. Somebody does something to you and it really disturbs you. Why would you do that? Why in the world would you say something like that? You shouldn't have said it. There's no reason. There's no purpose. There's no justification. Where do you come up with something like that? If you can say that, then I don't trust you anymore, because I don't know what else you are capable of doing. Because it didn't fit. It was inappropriate. It was unnecessary. So what really disturbs us is when something happens and it should not have happened. Like the phrase, wrongful death. Death is not so terrible. Wrongful death. Can't take that. Labor pains? Okay. False labor pain? Oh no. A life-saving operation. Messy, painful, long recovery, all of that. Okay, I can handle that. But you performed the surgery on me when it was supposed to be on somebody else? Oh no, that I can't take. So what really disturbs people and causes nervous breakdown? Senselessness. Shouldn't have happened. Shouldn't have happened. That is the most disturbing thing in the universe. But here's the good news. If something should not have happened, then how did it? How did it happen? Nothing can happen by itself. That's what we mean by creation. God created the world. Why? Because it can't create itself. There was nothing, and that nothing can't do anything. God created the world out of nothing. So what he creates is, what he doesn't create is not. To think that something happened and it shouldn't have happened is like believing in good God, bad God. It shouldn't have happened because God would never allow such a thing. So how did it happen? The other God did it. Satan, the devil. That is so unacceptable and not kosher. There isn't a bad God and there isn't a big God and a little God. There is only God. And nothing happens unless for some reason God makes it happen. So can something happen when it shouldn't have? No, it can't. Because what would make it happen? When, the very popular book years ago, it was called Why Do Bad Things Happen to Good People? Very popular, very, very successful book in terms of sales and popularity. Theological, a little soft. But the title was, Why Do Bad Things Happen to Good People? A better title would have been, can bad things happen to good people? Can bad things happen to bad people? Can bad things happen? Is a very good question. Because when we say bad, we mean that which should not have happened. Otherwise, it's not bad. A person passes away at the age of 98, surrounded by his family, in his own bed. That shouldn't have happened? That's bad? Actually, it's pretty nice. That's how a person should end his life. It's tragic, painful, bad? No. A young person dying, that we call bad. Why? Because, that shouldn't happen. But again, if it shouldn't happen, then what made it happen? That's why it is so disturbing and destructive of the human mind. Something can happen, and it wasn't meant to happen, and it was not supposed to happen, and it should not have happened. Then how did it happen? You say, well, things just happen. Oh, no. I cannot live in a world where there's no rhyme or reason, where anything can happen anytime, anywhere, for no reason. Can you imagine parents raising children? You wouldn't survive a week because of what could happen. If it were true that anything can happen at any time, then we wouldn't be paranoid. We would be right. You can't live in such a world. You let your kid cross the street? Okay, he's 48, but still, a 48-year-old can get hit by a truck. Another thing, when we say something bad happened, we mean it shouldn't have happened. How do we know what should or shouldn't happen? How do we know that? I can tell you what I like and what I don't like. I can tell you what I think should happen. But to be able to say that should not have happened, how do I know that? I don't have enough information to be able to make such a judgment. Two classical events. There was a flight, I forget what year it was, a flight that left Detroit on the way to LA. It crashed 10 minutes after takeoff and nobody survived. Two incidences related to that flight came out in the news. One guy arrived for the flight and was told that they had overbooked and that he was bumped off the flight. Now, he needed to be in LA in the worst way. Really important meeting, high power, whatever it was. Big deal. He was going to miss that meeting. He was so upset. He was so angry. He cursed everybody. He screamed at everybody. He was convinced that this was his worst day. That was the worst thing that could have happened to him. They didn't let him on the flight, despite all his screaming and protesting. At the very same time, a father drove his teenage daughter to the airport. She was going to go to LA. All of a sudden, she got cold feet. She said, I don't want to go. I'm afraid. The father, being a good father, a mature adult, calmed his daughter's fears and convinced her to get on the flight. The plane took off and the father felt really proud of himself. See, now that's a dad. get your daughter past her fears, put her on the plane. 10 minutes later, the plane crashed. The guy who thought this was the worst day of his life suddenly felt really blessed and fortunate. And the man who was so proud of putting his daughter on the plane wasn't so proud anymore. Not that he was wrong. We don't know what happens, what's supposed to happen, what's not supposed to happen. How do we judge these things? The father was right to put his daughter on the plane. But he would be wrong to say not getting on the plane should not happen. And the guy who wanted to get on the plane cannot argue that getting on the plane should happen. He should have been on that flight. Well, it turns out he shouldn't be on that flight. Nobody should have been on that flight. So here's the point. Bad things, if you're taking the word literally, bad is not the same as sad, it's not the same as painful, it's not the same as tragic. Bad means it shouldn't have happened. Well, what shouldn't happen never happens. It can't. So, do bad things happen to good people? No. Bad things don't happen to anybody because bad means it shouldn't, and if it shouldn't, it can't. Only what should happen can happen because something is making it happen for a reason. Without that reason, without that should, nothing happens. A leaf blown by the wind from one side of the street to the other only happens because it should. So we can relax. Nothing is going to happen unless it should happen. Now we have a different challenge. What if what does happen and should happen hurts me? It's painful. It's devastating. Then the question becomes, why should anybody suffer pain? Why should anybody be devastated? Good question. But it's a question you can work with, you can live with. It doesn't destroy you in its meaninglessness. So to believe that everything happens for a reason is a solid, intelligent, responsible, and realistic assumption. Because what shouldn't happen can't happen. And if you believe that things can happen when they shouldn't, you're destroying yourself. There is no life after that. There's no place to go with that. There's nothing you can do with that. It's not like this professor in Berkeley. Very popular class, popular professor. What did he teach? Have the courage to admit that things happen for no reason. Stop trying to justify everything. Stop trying to put a spin on everything. Bad things happen. Admit it. That was his class. That was his whole philosophy. If you had the courage, you would be able to admit that life makes no sense, stuff happens for no reason, it's completely unpredictable, and live with it. Turns out he was a survivor. It was the only way he could handle all that pain. For him, it was courageous. Have the courage to admit life stinks, that's it. And that's what enabled him to go on and become a professor. But for most people, The thought that things can happen for no reason is not acceptable. It is counterintuitive. So the good news is, you're right, bad things don't happen. Painful things happen, but always for a reason. Now we got to figure out what the reason is. But it is not courageous to believe that life stinks. That comes from total despair. It's not courageous. It's desperate. So whatever is happening, whatever you're experiencing, the pain is painful and the grief is real. But senseless can't be. That's good news. Shalom Aleichem. How are you? You know, I do a lot of talking, a lot of Zooming, many classes, many subjects, but that's all formal stuff. Hopefully good stuff, but formal. We also have a Wednesday night meeting that's more informal and kind of Hamish. If you want to join us for that kind of an event, interactive, time for questions and so on. If you want to join us for this side of conversation, click on the link below and join us every Wednesday night at 9 o'clock. Well, maybe not every Wednesday night, but we try to make it every Wednesday night at 9 o'clock, a more informal chat, which can be more enjoyable at times than the formal stuff. So check it out. Click on the link and join us. Try it. You'll like it.